Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Notre Dame and to the Notre Dame Law School Sports Law Panel on Staying in the Game. My name is Marcus Cole. I'm the Dean of Notre Dame Law School, and I'm delighted that you can join us tonight for a panel put on by the Black Law Students Association at Notre Dame Law School. The Black Law Students Association at Notre Dame is one of our oldest student organizations, and it's celebrating its 50th year this year. And today we're delighted that we could have sponsors like Faegre Drinker, the Mendoza College of Business, and the Department of Athletics here at the University of Notre Dame. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our immediate past president of the Notre Dame Black Law Students Association, Monica Bell.
Good evening. This evening I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to our amazing group of sports and entertainment panelists. As former president of the Notre Dame Black Law Students Association, I can tell you that organizing this event took more than a year. And so to see this group of all-stars sitting together now is a dream come true for me as well as the rest of the organization. To give you a little background on who these impressive panelists are, starting on the far end of the stage, we have our moderator, Jackie Wilson. Jackie is the current Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at BSC Global, leading DEI and social justice initiatives for the Barclays Center, the Brooklyn Nets, the Long Island Nets, Nets GC, and the New York Liberty. Jackie began his career as a litigator, but his love for sports led him to become the general counsel for All Pro Sports and Entertainment, Inc., a New York-based sports agency. Jackie is also the founder and CEO of Nova Fitness Innovation and focuses on promoting DEI within the company. Our first panelist is Max Siegel. Max has been the CEO of USA Track and Field for over 10 years, and in his time there, he has led the organization to financial growth, programmatic evolution, and inclusive representation. Mr. Siegel also owns Rev Racing, the NASCAR-supported team charged with developing female and minority drivers and pit crew members. He serves as a board member for the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality. Mr. Siegel made history as the highest-ranking African-American executive in NASCAR when he became president of global operations at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. Before that, at Sony BMG, he was on the executive team that managed the careers of Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and Usher, and was the president of Zomba Gospel. Mr. Siegel was also the first African-American to graduate with honors from Notre Dame Law School. Our next panelist is Mickey Carter. Mickey Carter has worked in a variety of capacities in the media industry, representing corporate interests as well as individual talent. Currently, Mr. Carter serves as the Executive Vice President of U.S. Networks Distribution at Paramount Global, representing the company's portfolio of networks and streaming products on a variety of platforms. Before joining the CBS team in 2013, Mr. Carter served as the Vice President of National Accounts at Fox News. Prior to his career in cable television, Mr. Carter worked as an attorney and business executive in the music and sports industries. In professional sports, he served as an attorney and player agent for several athletes, including Baseball Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn and NFL legend Reggie White. Our next panelist is Ndidi Massay. Ndidi currently serves as the Vice President of Workplace Culture and Diversity Initiatives for CBS Sports. Ndidi joined CBS Sports after running her own consulting business where she provided diversity, equity, and inclusion and corporate social responsibility council services and training corporate entities, national governing bodies, and collegiate athletic departments. She also served as the commissioner of the New York State Athletic Commission for 5 years, helped launch the Ross Initiative for Sports for Equality, and worked as a DEI consultant for the NFL. Ndidi is a member of the USA Wrestling Diversity and Inclusion Committee and Big Ten Conference Equality Coalition. Massay has served on numerous boards, including the National Association of Black Journalists, Sports Section, RISE, and Beat the Streets of New York. She is also a member of the Black Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Association and Women in Sports and Events. Our next panelist is Notre Dame's very own Raghib Ismail. Rocket is a retired American and Canadian football player, a wide receiver and kick returner. He played football for our own Notre Dame, where he was the consensus All-American and the Walter Camp Award winner before entering the Canadian Football League and subsequently the National Football League. Rocket played for the Oakland Raiders, the Carolina Panthers, and the Dallas Cowboys from '93 to 2002. Our final panelist is Jonathan Beane. Jonathan is the current Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer of the National Football League. He spearheads the league's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and collaborates with senior leadership to drive actionable change throughout the league. Prior to taking on this role, Jonathan held senior diversity roles at The Rock, 21st Century Fox, and Time Warner. Thank you for coming tonight and enjoy the panel.
Good evening, Notre Dame. So before we get started, to let you know, there's a QR code. If you scan the QR code, you can send in questions, and so we'll be reading those questions later on in the presentation. So when I first found out, who was going to be on this panel, I was extremely excited. And the first thing I thought about was, what was the most professional way for me to get selfies with all of the people that are up here? And then Max and Jakeem asked me to moderate, and I said, oh, I'm going to get all the photos. I see all the cameras out here now, so this is perfect. So I'm excited to be here. And so here on behalf of Indy Law School and BALSA, and so I want to start by speaking to our BALSA alum that are here. Notre Dame feels and looks totally different than it did, at least when I graduated 15 years ago. And I mean, yes, we have new buildings, but I mean, Notre Dame looks totally different than the school that I graduated from. And so, Ndidi, I'll start with you. Talk to us a little bit about your experience as a Black law student here. What were some of the challenges? What were some of the wins that you experienced, and how do you see that changing with the way that campus is set up now?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's always great to come back. It feels like home. Hopefully it will feel like home for forever. I love that it looks different. I mean, it brings me incredible joy because it wasn't so easy when I was here. I was able to go to school with these two gentlemen here, and they were a year ahead of me and really sort of put their arms around me and helped me. But there were so few of us, so if we didn't do that, we would have been really lost. But listen, my job and my passion is DE&I, and representation matters, opportunities matter, access matters. And I think the only way you do that is with intention. I mean, we have, a Black dean. I mean, amazing. And just sitting and talking to some students a little earlier today, it really gives me inspiration and hope. And, listen, I was supported here. Our numbers were small, but we were supported. We were definitely family. We helped each other. I mean, it's crazy. We're a little older than 15 years, because a little farther back, I'm not going to give the number, but we're still friends. We still support each other. And I think that's something that I would encourage all of you to do is you never know, what people's future careers will look like. Stay in touch, be supportive, and I'm happy. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I'm inspired. And I'm thrilled that that the law school looks different and it's better. Listen, representation matters, diversity. There's data that shows that diversity produces better product, and it's how it should be. So I'm happy.
Nice, Mickey.
I'm overwhelmed when I come back. It really feels like that I'm in a different place in terms of not having the same ability to get from point A to point B. And that's cool because it's beautiful and it's wonderful and it shows progress. I really have to echo some of Ndidi's comments. We were small, but we did feel, at least I felt, supported both by my fellow students, because I think that's what having small numbers hopefully does for you, and it certainly did that for us. But also by the school. I was telling the story to a few people earlier. We were really small, and it was noticeable, and we knew it, and then the school knew it. And so we, spoke with the administration about that issue, and we wanted to understand, since we didn't handle admissions, what they thought were some of the issues. And they were honest with us about what they thought some of the issues were, and then we were honest with them about what we thought some of the issues might be, and we developed a plan for how we could work together to try to attract more African American students, and we literally did that. And I mean, I was amazed to hear that BALSA is the largest membership that it's ever had currently. That's super encouraging. I can also say that over the years, we've had classes that have been in excess of 15 African American students, and things kind of can go up and down, right? There are cycles. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that once you get to a certain point, we haven't made it, because just as easily that you climb that mountain, you can go right back down again. And so it's something that hopefully there's a sense of pride over having accomplished a certain level of change, diversity, and hopefully there's a sense that there's a diligence needed in order to be able to maintain that. So, but I'm thrilled. It's always great to talk with current students and to hear about what the experience is like now. It makes it feel a little old, but that's just one of those things. I would rather be getting older than the alternative. So,
it's interesting. Both of you talked about having small numbers, but feeling supported and being close-knit. Judge Briscoe Clark, who's in here now, we talked about this before. When we were here, the numbers were so small that BALSA, HALSA, ALSA, were all the same group. We just had different agendas. So Tuesday was BALSA, Wednesday was HALSA, but it was the same 20 people going back and forth. And we were a close-knit group. And so what I like is, with the numbers being bigger, the group still feels close-knit. It still feels like family. It still feels like support. And, Max, you liked it so much, you did this twice. So you're a double domer. So I'd like to hear about your experience, coming from, as an ND undergrad, and then how that experience either differed or was the same when you came to law school.
Yeah, so in all honesty, I struggled as an undergraduate. And I left here not really knowing what I wanted to do, and I took some time off. And so when I came back to law school, 3 years out of Notre Dame, all the things I probably hated about the school were the things that kind of guided me as I started my career, and all the values that I learned. It's funny, we were standing backstage, and I have a picture of Raghib, Ndidi, Mickey, and myself, and Kevin Warren at his house when we were students. And we're all still friends here today. And I think that, the bond that you form when you're here, the values that you learn when you're here, are things that stick with you your entire life. So when I came back to law school, it was with a purpose. And I think that I remember Dean Link saying us our first meeting that we build Maseratis, that everyone has the unique ability to make a contribution to society if you work together and understand what your value was. And I was halfway skeptical about that, but I find that to be entirely true, that if you go about your work and you try to impact your organization or your industry and ultimately culture, you get a lot of reward out of your job. What I will say is, Notre Dame forms a different kind of lawyer, and I think one with substance and credibility. And I have to say, for me, I'm incredibly proud that Dean Cole is here. Not only does representation matter, but we have someone who is an incredible scholar who has credibility and is transforming the law school right in front of our eyes. And so for me, my law school experience was incredible. And as I tell a lot of people who come here, the network that you form and the support that you got here, it continues on professionally. And I don't care what I'm doing. If a resume comes across my desk and someone has a Notre Dame affiliation, I'm going to stop and take a look at it. So law school was tremendous for me, and I'm glad to see that we're continuing to grow and diversify.
Now, Rocket, your experience was a little bit different. You were, modern day Superman. Talk to us a little bit about your experience at Notre Dame and being an athlete, student athlete on campus.
Well, for me, I have to give you context so that when you hear what you hear after, you understand the divine intervention that took place. So my father died when I was 10. My brothers and I, it was my mother now, she used 3 jobs, humping it, trying to make ends meet. and my 77-year-old grandmother decides to say, hey, come send the boys to live with me. So we leave Newark, New Jersey to go to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And unbeknownst to us, we left like right on time because, as I would later find out, there was like a plot straight out of the bowels of hell that was about to release this drug called crack cocaine in the city of Newark, and what was a tough place. And, you know, you had to be robust in your confidence, or even faking like you had confidence, or you would be preyed upon. It became like exponentially worse. So my mother from time to time would send money so that we could call long distance back home. And I remember 1983, called back to the phone booth that was in front of our house. We lived in like a new version of the projects. It was called Georgia King Village. And there was a phone booth that was directly in front of our townhouse. And when I say townhouse, don't think townhouse like brownstone. It's like townhouse with all the trappings of whatever a project would typically have. So called the phone booth, and I think somebody picked it up. He's like, yo, it's Raghib and Kadri. And they're like, yo, it's Raghib and Kadri. And so they just started giving us what was happening in Newark. And I couldn't believe my ears, because they were like, we see people getting killed. So-and-so went to jail and he got raped. So-and-so was sleeping with the guy that sells crack. But then when she got wore out, he said he didn't want her anymore. So she brought her daughter to him. And I was like, it was like my mind couldn't grasp a hold of all these. Like, I was just hearing things that sounded like, I was like, what kind of evil is this? And I remember I said a prayer in my heart, and the prayer was like, wow, like in two parts. It was, yo, how did we get out of that? And man, what a blessing that we're not in that environment right now, because my father is not around. We probably would be prey. And I remember when I asked that question, like, how did we get out of that? Boom. I'm instantly in what my grandmother would later tell me was a vision. And in the vision, I'm in this, imagine maybe 2 football fields long, 2 football fields wide. And it's a field, and it has just been tilled, like it was ready to have seeds planted in it. And it's surrounded by these massive evergreen trees, like there were sentries guarding what was on the field. And I remember looking at the sky, and the sky was the most brilliant crystal blue that I'd ever seen. And mind you, I'm on the phone listening to what is happening, and this is happening at the same simultaneously. It's like I'm in another realm. And I look around, and I'm like, what is happening? And I look down, and I see this old black woman, and she's in a posture of prayer on her knees. And as she's there, I didn't hear anything she said, but I instantly knew everything about her. And I knew she was a slave, and I knew that in spite of what had been presented to her as the representation of divinity in the slave quarters, she tapped into a level of divine inheritance that provoked her to lift up her progeny that would inhabit this land, coming out of her loins and beyond, and said a prayer that I was in the midst of benefiting from as far as the answer. And it was like I was out of it. And now you talk about my Notre Dame experience. So everything that was necessary, anything that we needed, from getting to my grandmother was 77 years old. And it's like, I didn't appreciate how old 77 was, and 77 raising 3 preteen grandsons. And until I got older, I was like, man, you need energy to raise children. This ain't no joke. This children, boy, you got to, man. And it's hopes if it's 2 of you, like, hey, you need to go ahead and, hey, let me get this power nap. And so it was like, from a 77-year-old grandmother having strength and vision to a community, like we were from 99, matter of fact, I didn't even see any light-skinned people in Newark when we were younger, bro. We were like literally, there were a couple of Puerto Ricans down the street over here, but Like when we and then when we moved to Wilkes-Barre, it was like it flipped. It was like maybe 2 black people, my brother and I, and then everybody else was white. But that community galvanized together, and then it was like they had the capacity to see the light in us. And then people would be sent, and they would speak life to us. And one of the people that were sent that spoke life to us happened to be a Notre Dame fan, and I was in 7th grade, and I'm sleeping over his son's house, his house, and we're in the basement. We're playing ColecoVision or something. We ended up falling asleep. I have this dream. I'm in a field of aromatic flowers, and all of a sudden I hear this interruption. I wake up, and Mr. Dwyer is sitting in the lazy boy smoking a pipe, and I'm disoriented. I look around, and he puts on a band album of the Notre Dame marching band. They play the fight song, and he's looking over there and says, "You hear that, laddie buck? That's the finest band in the land. Get over here, let me tell you about the Fighting Irish." I'm like, the Fighting Irish? What the heck? All of a sudden, the indoctrination was on full blast. Yo, he had, and I'm not exaggerating, he had a television on a stand about this big, and it was a beta. It was like the VHS and beta was still battling to see who's going to be in the marketplace dominance. He took a video, he put it in. It was called Wake Up the Echoes. I'm telling you, it was like watching the Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia all in once, and like a football version of it. And I was like mesmerized. And from that day on, he was like, "You're going to go there. You're going to be dominant there. You're going to be legendary there. You're going to do all." And mind you, I didn't weigh 100 pounds until like the end of my junior year in high school. There was nothing about me physically. I was fast, but it wasn't like blowing you away fast. And so all of a sudden, people are being sent that are speaking life. People are being sent that are necessary. Hey, no, go this way, go on there. I'm having relationships with people who are in the city influential. So now when people see me, hey, that's the wrong way, Rocket. Don't do that, do this. Getting prepared. So all of that, I'm ushered. I get on campus, and that same grace, which I understand it to be now, that same grace, it was just flowing my way. I remember one day, and just to show you the grace was so abundant, we got the lavish, high-level modern dorms, Grace Hall in Flannel. I was in Grace. We had the air conditioning. Man, we had the high-level food service place in the bottom. Man, my roommate lived in Gary, Indiana. His parents would come up like twice a month and bring us a bag of groceries, break us off $20. Man, we go downstairs, eat it all up in one day. But it was still like it was lavish. So all these things happen. Then I get on the football field, and it's like, as soon as I get here, Coach Holtz, we did one little drill. Coach Holtz like, "Oh, yeah, son, your ass is going to be a star here. Let's go." And it was like, I'm just saying all these things. And then it was like the relationships that were developed with the student body, it flowed seamless. Nothing was difficult for me. And I know that's not everybody's experience, but I know that because of my ancestor praying on my behalf and the Most High God hearing that prayer, I was a beneficiary of it. And even to this day, even when things go hard, man, answers, remedies, solutions, they come to the fore. So that, in a nutshell, is what my Notre Dame experience was like, and to this day, it's still like. And I dealt with the Cliff Notes version. There's more to the story. But I'm just saying, that might have sounded like it was long, but that was short.
So, Our Lady, touchdown Jesus, first down Moses, divine intervention was your experience.
All day.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And Ndidi and John, I want to talk to you guys about DEI in sports. We are all operating in a relatively new term that is being used, and it means a lot of different things at different places. And so, Jonathan, I'll start with you because you were doing DEI back before it was DEI, back when it was just like some don't feel right. Some don't feel right. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get into the DEI space? And what does that now look like at the NFL?
Yeah, that's can you all hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks for that question. I love that because it has changed. It has changed quite a lot. When I started in the 2000s, and I think it's fair to say that DEI was not a priority. It was not considered a priority in the corporate environment. It was not considered a priority in government. It was not considered a priority in philanthropy. It was not considered a priority in nonprofits. Much of it was EEOC driven. It was compliance oriented. For me, I kind of fell into it based off of my passion. I've always been someone that had a strong belief in the equality of all human beings, and that came from my parents. And so with that, I also wanted to have a career that I felt was impactful. So initially, I went to law school. I was doing legal work, being a consultant at PwC, but I just wasn't being fulfilled through that kind of work. Long story short, I ended up being the head of strategic planning at a company called Johnson Controls, and then my wife told me that we were moving from Michigan to back to New York, and so that provided an opportunity to look at things a little bit different. This was after 9/11, really started reevaluating, and I said, I know that this space is not one that gets a lot of attention, but it's something that I cared about. And so I started the first ERG at my company. I was part of the culture campaign, and I said, I don't know what it is, but I just want to go into it. I wanted to see what opportunity was. And so when we moved back to New York, I started looking around. I got a transfer, but I really wanted to try something different. And I started reaching out to different people. And then again, my wife comes back and she says she knows somebody who knows somebody. And then that somebody is somebody named Lisa Garcia Quiroz, who unfortunately has passed away, but she was the head of philanthropy, diversity, foundation, a bunch of other things at Time Warner at the time. And she was doing groundbreaking stuff. So the stuff that people are focusing on now, she was focusing on that in the early 2000s. And she wanted somebody with a business background. And I wanted to get away from just the business thing and wanted to focus on how I could help people and make an impact. And we found each other, and like 5 or 6 interviews later and memos and whatever else she put me through, she eventually, she did call and she said, all right, I got good news, bad news. Bad news, you didn't get the job. Good news, I'm going to create a job for you. So you didn't get the diversity job, but I'm going to give you a philanthropy job. I said, well, I wasn't really thinking about that, but long story short, I applied for that. I ended up getting that job. 3 months later, the person that got the diversity job gets let go. It wasn't working out. She said, guess what? You get both jobs. so this is, I think, in life, following your passion and all that, but also a little bit of luck along the way. And then around this time is around the crash of 2007. So it was a very difficult period. So I was like, am I going to get let go? Because again, this was not prioritized. I did not. We were able to build up DEI from scratch. Time Warner was doing things that I think a lot of other organizations aren't doing. Today, if you look at Discovery Warner Media, I think that's what it's called now. They've got around 50 people on that team. It just goes to the commitment. And I'm proud to say that, hey, when there was like one person, me and Lisa, we were able to get to the place where the company felt it was that important and fell in love with the work. I like working with people. I'm a strategist by nature. I always think there is a solution to a problem, and doing the work and showing leaders that this is something that's important and that can lead to optimal performance. I always say diversity and inclusion leads to CIO, creativity, innovation, and optimal performance. With that said, I ended up having a wonderful 8 years there and been doing it doing it ever since. And in the meantime, it went from compliance to then a big focus on diversity and really drilling down on what diversity is and trying to really push that. But there was no inclusion, there was no equity, there was no belonging, there were no other words. It was just diversity. And you look at it today, right? And there's a lot of things that led to it. Of course, we can talk about the period of Floyd, but there was a lot going on way before that. So it's evolved. People have become much more educated and aware, and they see that there's the value. A lot of research that has occurred that really tells you the true benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And people have bought into it, not only within the United States, but also globally. I've worked for global organizations as well. There's a sense of urgency behind this, but I temper this. So it's wonderful. The platform is at a different place now. People like Ndidi are being hired at a very senior level to actually be able to make a difference, to be empowered, to have resources to actually do something, and to be engaged with the senior leaders at the company. But let's not be comfortable, because this sense of urgency needs to continue. Just as quickly as we're getting this, it could be taken away. So let's make sure every day that we're focused on it. But to me, that's where we're at.
I mean, well, thank you for that answer, first of all. That's very insightful. And one of the things that you said that I want to hold on to for a second was that they wanted someone with a business background. A lot of times when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, people automatically think of it as an HR role. And some of what we do touches on HR, but that is not really what that is. And so Ndidi and I were talking about having a business background and people coming from corporate coming over to DEI. Ndidi, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how does it look at CBS Sports?
Yeah, sure. So my journey, I think, really starts my background. I'm not gonna tell stories like you did. I can't tell stories like he does. But so I was an athlete in college. I played softball at Northwestern. I grew up as an athlete. I grew up playing with boys, which made me good, and girls. And I knew I wanted a career in sports. And so I always had this burning desire and question and fight on how come I don't get an opportunity to play in the NFL? Like, why not me? Because I'm a woman? Because my sport is, there's no professional. There's softball now. I mean, it doesn't really pay. But I have a fire, like Raghib has a fire. And I was always mad. Like, I want that opportunity. I want that opportunity. I'm the odd person out. When I'm in law school, you see, I was with Mickey and Max and Kevin Warren. I wanted to be in sports, law, and business just like them. But I never saw people like me. There were not women doing this, let alone black women. And then on top of it, I'm mixed. I have a white mom and a black dad, and I'm caught between races and genders and saying, like, I just want to be in sports. And I want to fight for those who don't have opportunities. So just naturally, the whole diversity thing, whether it's women, whether it's people of color, whether it's LGBTQ plus disability, was always sort of in my mind, as there are a lot of us who don't fit in a box for whatever reason, and we deserve the opportunity that everyone else does. And quite frankly, I think it's one of my superpowers. I think it makes you unique. It makes you stand out. So to me, I'm like, I want to own it, but I need others to see that. I need others to give me opportunities to allow me to have a voice at the table. So that's sort of like the burn inside of me. How it happened was I was working at ESPN, and I sort of oversaw our high school. I was the number 2 in the growth of our high school, the high school business at ESPN, and we were able to. I didn't really want this project, but I oversaw. We had this sort of high school Olympic jamboree, if you call it that, at like the ESPN Wide World of Sports, and part of that was the Under Armour All-American football game. And so, if ESPN did their job right and truly identified the best high school football players in the country, then those should be the top college football players in the country, and those should then, have an opportunity at the NFL. So when I was working with our team on programming, I thought, well, let's do some life skills, and let's do some community stuff, and let's talk to these young men. And I called not a counterpart, but a friend at the NCAA and a friend at the NFL, brought them in, and we created some really great programming. And so it was kind of life skills, kind of community engagement, kind of DE&I. before it was, D&I. And it was fantastic. We really schooled these young men. And at the end of the day, I left ESPN simply because they moved my position from New York to Bristol, Connecticut. My husband told me I could go to Bristol and that he and our sons would stay in New York. So clearly I left ESPN. And when I left ESPN, I took some time off to think, like, what do I really want to do? And my two colleagues, and one is still at the NFL, and the gentleman at the NCAA is no longer there, basically called me and said, you should go into D&I. And I was like, well, D&I? I was like, come on. And they're like, no, when you did this, you lit up. When you worked with us and these high school kids, you lit up. You already have relationships. You're at ESPN. You have relationships with the NFL, with the NCAA. And essentially, both of them handed me projects. They said, come work with us and learn from our D&I experts. Like, you got to learn. And again, I went to them and I was like, D&I, me? And they looked at me. They're like, Black woman sports. You're always the only one in the room. You are D&I. But again, sort of the law school in me and the education in me is I'm not D&I. And I think this is one of the problems. You can't just put a person of color in the position and expect them to succeed. It's a trade. You got to learn it, right? So I went and did some consulting at the NFL and did some consulting at the NCAA, and I learned, and I learned, and I learned, and I learned. And then, I actually had to go back and get a real job for a while. So I also was a lawyer at ABC News negotiating deals. But then I got an opportunity with this organization called RISE, which is the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality. Steve Ross, who owns the Dolphins, was looking to create this nonprofit to very specifically use a sport as a vehicle to advance race relations. And he was looking for a leader. And Steve's pretty picky, as most owners are. And he was looking and looking and looking. He was interviewing. He interviewed corporate America. He interviewed nonprofit. He interviewed for like 6 months. Didn't like anyone. And my particular colleague at the NFL called me, and he said, you should meet with Steve Ross. And I said, yeah, okay, multi-billionaire owner, of course I'll meet with Steve Ross, right? So we literally had dinner, and the next morning he hired me to create this nonprofit for him. It was my first time to jump into DE&I full-time with someone behind me who was at a very high level, who had the money, who had the power, who had the connections. Probably one of my biggest accomplishments and most difficult tasks was to create this board. And Steve thinks big. Steve was like, I want the commissioner of the NFL, the commissioner of MLB, the commissioner of NHL. Go make it happen. The president of ESPN, the president of CBS Sports. And wow, it was a chore, and I made it happen. So all of those commissioners are on the board now. I pulled in my friend Max on the board. And again, he fit it, obviously, president of USA Track and Field. Pulled in a friend of mine from Northwestern, who was the chair of the board of the United States Tennis Association as well, because we can't have a D&I board with all white men, right? I mean, that's not happening. And quite frankly, they deserve to be there, right? They're there with the commissioners, and we're thinking large scale on D&I. So that's really my experience in a nutshell. And I'm lucky enough and blessed enough to be able to roll in this experience, this passion, into my new role, which is a year and a half at CBS Sports. And I'll just say that I was a journalism major undergrad, so it's really, for me, it's where I should be right now. And instead of the business background at CBS, they loved that I was a lawyer. They were like, and you're a lawyer? Like, bonus. How do you understand diversity, equity, inclusion without being a lawyer, without having some understanding of legal background? So again, I'm super blessed to be in this role. And I agree with you, Jonathan. We need to keep it going. Obviously, there was a big, burst after the murder of George Floyd, but we need to keep this moving forward. And I think that I'm also love my job because I'm positioned correctly. I report directly to our chairman, so I have a D&I lens in every single part of our business. So I'm not in HR. HR is my partner, and I have resources because I think that's the key: how you're positioned. And if you have resources. If you don't have those, it's pretty difficult.
Please.
Quickly, I mean, I love everything that they've said, and obviously they are very accomplished DE&I professionals. But I was sitting here thinking about the fact that, you know, part of the reality is that they have a lot of experience in the DE&I space and do a fantastic job trying to help move organizations forward. But really, all of us, hopefully, work in DE&I every day, right? I mean, you know, from the point that you leave law school, you know, while you're in law school, at the point certainly that you leave law school and you go into your first job. I mean, hopefully this isn't your experience. You know, it was certainly mine. I know it was many of ours 150 years ago, back when we were in the same spot you all were in, where we were, you know, walking into settings, whether it was as summer associates or our first law firm jobs or organizations we were at, where we were the only, right? And so while you don't have power to make policy changes at that point, you aren't hiring, you aren't in a leadership position, just your presence there is helping to advance and to forward a DE&I agenda based upon just how quickly that you find your own voice by your actions every day, how you do your work. You are setting an example, and you're helping to you know, change people's minds and to really help people gain understanding that they may not have. So much of the problems that I've seen in the space over many years working in corporate America is just ignorance. And so you start there, and then you move into higher positions where you do have an ability to make some choices, make some decisions, find a voice, to have dialogue about issues that then starts to make some changes. It's not systemic changes necessarily at your company level that I know that these guys do, but you know, if you have enough people within an organization who are doing DE and I work every day, then that's what helps move the organization forward. And it can't just be people of color doing that, right?
Yes. So, couple things. So Mickey and I were in academic advising for student athletes when we were here, and Rocket was our student, and he hasn't changed a bit. Same stories. So he was amazing then, storyteller, still is now. And then Ndidi was angry in law school. I'm going to attest to that. And that hasn't changed either. No, but, you know, it's interesting listening to this. And one of the things that has frustrated me about the conversation, so I have two roles. So I run the national governing body for Olympic sports and track and field, and then I own a NASCAR team. And I got involved in NASCAR when Mickey and I originally, we represented Reggie White in the NFL. Reggie was one of my best friends. He retired, got down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and he said, Max, there are so many opportunities for women and people of color in NASCAR. I'm like, you're calling a black dude with a Jewish name, tell him to be in NASCAR. There are no opportunities for women and people of color in NASCAR. So Reggie, Ronnie Lott, Eddie DeBartolo, myself, we went out to buy a team. We found one. We were going to make the announcement. It was going to be the first majority-minority-owned race team, and then Reggie passed away. So we let that go. I was on the global management team at Sony in New York, and then a year later, you know, we had met all these owners. Teresa Earnhardt called me, and she was the only female owner in the sport. There's no way she would ever hire a black guy to be the president of global operations for her race team. I flew down there, much like Ndidi. She had interviewed 72 people and offered me the job on the spot. And her motivation at the time was she was innovative. She wanted someone in entertainment. She loved licensing. And I was scared to death. And so I actually called Tony Dungy, who's a mentor of mine. I said, listen, Coach, I said, look, I have this opportunity. I can stay at Sony. I can go down to NASCAR. And he said, tell me what's going on. And it literally was the year they won the Super Bowl. I called him on Friday night. I'm like, you might be a little busy right now, but if you can call me back, it'd be great. He called me. They played the Patriots. And he said, listen, Max, it's rare that you get an opportunity to impact an organization and industry and culture. And when you do, I think that God is using you to make a difference. So I went down there. There were no people of color ever in the history of that organization that worked there. 600 employees, $200 million a year for a race team. And we had such an incredible connection around things that they were passionate about. Winning, going fast, and you know, And it was a platform for me. When you find something that you're passionate about, you get to talk about things that you may not do in everyday life. The other thing that I picked up, we started having success on the track. We started, generating more revenue. And when those things have a positive impact on people's lives, they listen to you in a manner that's a little bit different. So for me, it was all about having credibility and making an impact, which gave me the permission to have the conversation. And then what I said was, if I ever gotten an opportunity where I could hire, then I had to lead by example. So we've held on to this race team for 14 years. All the George Floyd stuff happened, but Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson and Daniel Suarez, they all drove for me when they were 14 years old. And we stayed the course to make sure that an industry now that realizes that diversity is good for the business is an important priority. Now, we brought those same things. I brought those same principles. When I came to USA Track and Field 10 years ago, we hadn't had a new sponsor in 11 years. We had the worst Olympic performance in Beijing. It was terrible. There were 2 people of color in the entire organization with the most diverse sport in the Olympic movement. Right now, there's my COO and I are the only 2 black C-suite executives in the entire Olympic movement right now. But we were intentional to hire the best people and have a diverse staff, and that means diversity of thought, diversity of life experience. And we just recently, over the last few years, the best athletic success in the history of the organization, the $500 million deal with Nike, the most success that we've had as an organization, and I give it all to having a diverse team that help you solve problems, that really help you think about things in a very different manner. So the one message I'm going to say to everyone, you do have a difference to impact the way that people think. But as you become successful and you move up in your career, and as Mickey said, you have influence, I think, you should take it seriously. It's important to create those opportunities. Because I knew when I started the race team, if I didn't own the race team, the chances of a black or minority or woman driver getting in a car that didn't have the access or the resource to do it were slim to none. And so for me, I appreciate the work that everybody up here does because it is important. But the one thing I'll say as I look across the panel consistently is you have people who are quality executives. It's not because they're female. It's not because we're minority executives. The people up here on the stage impact the organization in a positive way. And so, I'm just thrilled and honored to be up here with my panelists because I know what they do every day. But I just like to encourage anyone that if you have the opportunity to make a difference, please do it.
Let me just grab the mic right quick because I was there for a lot of that stuff, and Max is being a little bit modest. I will say that one of the things that I've always admired and one of the ways that my big brother here has always had a strong influence upon me is that this is a person who has always sought out big challenges, not just little ones. With most of his career choices he's made, he's had the courage to bet on himself and to take on big challenges. When he went to NASCAR, he said he was nervous, and anybody would be. It was a huge job. It was a controversial job. But I'll tell you, I was working at Time Warner at the time, and my boss knew about Max and I and about my background and our association. That was kind of my first foray coming out of our business and going into corporate America. And I told him about Max and NASCAR. And he said to me, he's a white guy, and he said, oh my gosh, he's like, how does Max feel about going into NASCAR? That's like rednecks and it's nothing but, Southern white people. And I said, this may surprise you, but you've looked at it the exact wrong way. I said, Max is very used to being around a whole bunch of people that aren't like him, and he's very used to being the only person in the room who looks like him. The real question is, how is NASCAR going to feel about Max? That was the real question. And so, while he can talk about his trepidation going in, I can tell you that this man has, and you've heard just a little bit, and you're probably thinking, wow, what are all these jobs that this guy's done in all these areas? It's because he's had the confidence to always bet on himself. And when you do that, I think you will be shocked at what you can accomplish And certainly I haven't been shocked at what he's been able to accomplish, or Ndidi either. And, you know, just the two people that I've been closest to over the years. So that's just what I wanted to add about his journey.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about Dee and I listen for hours, but I just wanted to add one more thing, if you guys don't mind, is you talked a little bit, I think, Mickey, about minds. And I'll tell you, my philosophy is I'm not worried about changing anyone's mind. I'm really not. Children, different story. I'm worried about people's behaviors, people's actions and execution, because I think ultimately that changes minds. And when we think about things that Max has done, that's exactly what he's done, right? And it's all intentional. It's intentionally reaching back. It's executing. It's excellent product. You can't argue that. And when you're the first, Black CEO of a NASCAR team and you kill it, you can't deny the next one. So I think that when we're in these roles and we're in these missions, number one, you got to be excellent, and you got to execute. And I just think it's about action for me much more than it is about people's minds.
I really appreciate you saying that. One of the things that I loved about this conversation is not one person has talked about DEI as like being the right thing to do. Like, if we have to have a conversation about this is the right thing to do, then we're not ready for what's next. You talked about how DEI drives business, how it is the right thing for the business. It's the right thing for innovation. It's the right thing for driving revenue. So I appreciate you all sharing that. And so I'm going to switch gears a little bit and kick it back over to Rocket here, because when I came on Notre Dame's campus in 2004, Tyrone Willingham was the head coach. And he is, to my recollection, the only Notre Dame head coach not to have been given his full first contract. He was let go after 3 years. And so I was here during the campus demonstrations and conversations and real uncomfortable times. Now, fast forward, we have Coach Freeman, which I can honestly say I never thought that was something that was going to happen again. And so I want to get your perspective on what it's like to now have Coach Freeman in the fold. How did you feel when he was hired, and how do you feel having that representation now?
Well, one thing that I've learned to do, and I'm learning how to continue to do it, is to, on topics that can be triggering in some instances, whether it's me or people who are in the particular environment, is to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to get emotional one way or the other. And so when Coach Kelly ended up going down to LSU, I was like stunned. I was like, okay, wait a minute. And it was just like I just got quiet. And then I remembered when Coach Kelly hired Marcus from Cincinnati, which it seemed strange at the time, but he was like, I just hired the next head coach of Notre Dame University. And it was the young up-and-coming defensive coordinator out of Cincinnati. And I was just like, okay, that perhaps it turned out to be prophetic. And so with that understanding, and then when he was hired, it was just like, okay, Lord, this is how I look at things. I'd try to take a different view of it than what a lot of times the media does, because I've learned the hard way that when I take the perspective that the media has on topics in our culture, then I tend to have the emotional responses that aren't beneficial for me and my peace. So that was the initial perspective. But then once the season started and they had us ranked number 5, I was like, okay, these cats are trying to set us up. Because in my mind, after meeting the coaching staff and watching the team and just seeing what was set up, just from a pure football perspective, I was like, we might be at the highest. I would rank us at like 15. Like, that was just how I was like, 15 is right where we're probably in our wheelhouse right there. Anything higher than that, is a setup. Anything lower than that is disrespectful. So, so my expectations about that were I'm smooth. I was like, okay, the first year, look, you need a star quarterback. You need some. I mean, in the type of game that we have now, if your quarterback's not a star or close to a star or can at least get out of trouble and run like a star, then it's going to be tough hauling. And then the only reason I said top 15 because I felt like, okay, our front seven, just the interior linemen and linebackers, our front seven is solid. And I felt like with a solid group and with above average coaching, they can be a problem for people. So I was like, okay, I didn't expect Marshall to happen, but when I looked at but when I say this, I look at it like this. I'm like, we're not a good enough team to beat ourselves, which is turnovers, and the other team at the same time. Now, if we had a couple of other factors on the field, I'm like, oh yeah, we can overcome that. But right now, that's like an insurmountable task at the moment. So I am pleasant in my demeanor. I want us to win every game. I know that's not something that is probably going to happen, and I just look for the improvement over time. And it was interesting when you talked about Tyrone Willingham, because I remember we had just finished the ESPN shoot, and it was Utah and BYU. And I flew in from Utah, did an appearance here locally in town, and I came over and just was shooting the breeze with the coach. And so we were talking, and so we had a plan. As we started talking, he's like, hey, man, I want you to come in this summer, and I want you to help the receivers and this, that, and other. I was like, yeah, man, this, that, other, whatever. So we had this plan together, and that was like Sunday. And I fly home, and then I guess the next day they fired him. And then I was like, oh, it shocked my system. And I was like, wow. But I was very angry, and I was like, my first response was, man, why they do this to the brother? They let other people have a chance the same as they should give him the same chance they gave everybody else. And I was just like, because I was still young. And the next show, we were in Atlanta, and I could control my emotions. I didn't want to control my emotions. And we were on the set, and they asked a question, and they were just like, so for me, my grandmother told me when you do something wrong, or if someone does something wrong, the next step is to repent. You're doing wrong. To repent is in action, just turn and go the other way. And so when they asked me on the set, bro, I got biblical on them cats. I was like, hey, I don't know about the next coach or whatever, but they said, what does Notre Dame need to do right now? Like, man, Notre Dame needs to repent. This is wrong. Somebody help me. No. So it was like those are my two perspectives, and I'm a little more seasoned now. So with Marcus, I'm pleasantly surprised. But now I'm also not the guy that just because somebody's black that they need to be the coach, because I know what it's like, man, when you don't. If somebody doesn't have the acumen, if they don't have the skill set, but they look the part, man, that's almost worse. So I don't like that either. So I'm just saying, I feel like we're good, and I feel like for me, one of the smartest moves was the fact, because he looked shook that doggone bowl game. Man, he was on the sidelines, like, uh-oh, this cat, boy, this is fish out of water time. But I love that he went out and got another head coach. He went out and got Al Golden, who just came off a Super Bowl run with the Bengals, who was a former head coach in college. So I was like, all right, yes, he has to have somebody on the staff who can come in, and he's older, and so he can come in and say, okay, look, this is how we look at it, this is how we do it, this is how we handle this is how we go forth. Just being in that position before, you need a mentor, somebody that's been there before, you know. So I think all the ingredients are in place. Everything is set perfectly for him to be able to succeed, and just pump the brakes if anybody's out here is panicking or like, oh, he's not going to be here much longer. No, just relax. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine.
So I'm going to give you a parent's perspective, because my son just graduated, played here, And I'm going to tell you what's interesting when you look at Rockets era and you had Coach Holtz, there was a culture that was built, a culture of excellence, and there was a culture where people's lives were transformed while they were playing. So I don't think that you should ever sacrifice excellence, but I remember when my son got the news that he was going to be the head coach, and I found that it's hard sometimes to transition from being an assistant or position coach to being a head coach at the same institution because you have a different kind of relationship with your players. But I can tell you that all the offensive linemen, they were all ecstatic. And so for me, I'm looking at what does college athletics really stand for? Yeah, you want to win championships, which is critical to keep your job. But at the same time, do you come out of a program a much better person for the rest of your life than when you went into it? And I struggle with that. And I have a daughter that plays Division I volleyball. So what I think about the coach right now is we got to give him enough time to build his culture, to put his team together and make this the place. I mean, he's proven that he can recruit, and I think that we'll have the talent here. But I just ask people to have some grace in giving him an opportunity to establish what his football program should look like.
That's a very good point. And so, when we were, I had a prep call for this panel with Jakeem and Max, and I will say that we spent 90% of the conversation talking about what I want to talk to you about right now, Jonathan, is that Rooney Rule. And so this transitions really nicely, into that. And so, one, I want you to just explain what the Rooney Rule is for those who may not know. But my real question, the real question that we were debating was, does it work?
Yeah. Again, another good question. I would say just for the Rooney Rule, and for those that don't know what it is, the Rooney Rule was initiated it was created in 2002. It was initiated in the 2003 season. The reason why was there were two coaches at the time that were let go, even though their team had a good record. And also, when you looked at overall the number of black head coaches in the league, it was really low. And so at the time, you had Johnny Cochran and Cyrus Mary, sorry. They had threatened legal action. And so what happened was they actually got together with league officials and the commissioner to actually talk about this. As a result, Dan Rooney was the real initiator of what we call the Rooney Rule. And at that time, what it said was that whenever there is a head coach opening, that there was the requirement that at least one person that was going to be considered be a black candidate. And what do we call that today? But if you look at it broader, it simply is a diverse slate. And so now when you look at diverse slates, which are initiated in academic institutions, corporations around the world, nonprofit organizations, it's the idea of ensuring that you provide access and opportunity for roles by basically requiring that you have people from a variety of different backgrounds. Of course, now it's more inclusive. It's not just black men, but in the corporate world and for the larger world, it includes women and it includes other diverse individuals as well. It's about providing access and opportunity. Let's go back to where we are today. We've now evolved the Rooney Rule to make it better. And what we've done is, instead of for coordinator positions, head coach and GM, we require at least 2 external minority candidates. And that could be a woman and or a person of color to be in that diverse slate when there's a head coach, GM, or coordinator opening. We also have now included QB coach to be a part of that. The idea behind the Rooney Rule is not about the results, the actual decision. What the Rooney Rule does is it provides that, again, access and opportunity to compete for a position, to ensure that we all broaden the realm of candidates that you will consider, to ensure that you're not just digging in your own hole to find the person that might be good for that role. I am a believer that the Rooney Rule is extremely helpful, not only at the National Football League, but every other organization that chooses to do a diverse slate. I am also a believer that it's not enough. We have to do way more than the Rooney Rule. And that's unfortunately what happens is people have this thought that the Rooney Rule ensures that a person of color gets hired for the role. That's not what it's built for. It's built to make sure that you are allowed to get into a room to show the person that's making the decision that you are fantastic and you're the right person for the role. It does not stop bias. It does not stop side connections of saying, oh my gosh, I had a great golfing outing with this person, I just love this person. It doesn't stop all the other things which prevent equity. What it does is provide access and opportunity. So then, what are the other things we need to do? We need to make sure that we provide opportunities for people to get to know each other as human beings. So we have what we call an Accelerator Program, which we did for the first time. We had some of the strongest candidates and front office and head coach meeting with all the primary owners. First time we've ever done that in the National Football League. Bring the humanness to opportunities. So then they're saying, oh my gosh, I know Eric Bieniemy. I know his philosophy. I know his personality. This is someone I can connect with because I've met him in a non-formal way, which is really, you really don't get to know someone if you're interviewing them for the first time. We try to come up with other ways of slowing down the hiring cycle. Right now it's hurry, get that coach. We want to make that slower. So you have to come up with other creative ways that's best for your industry. And so for us, we have the frustration, because I do believe, I think it's absolutely fantastic that you have a black head coach here. And I think that means everything, because you know how many, we unfortunately don't have that in many major schools today. So that is important, but the coach has to perform, but we also have to give black coaches and diverse coaches the same leeway that other coaches have been given historically. And we also have to give that grace and let him build his team. And just as we would, if we were in that position, allow him to create that philosophy and get the players that he wants to then create the results that Notre Dame is used to. So for me, there are many, and we've had many players, and we've had many coaches, and we've had others that have been very critical of the Rooney Rule. But I think what that is about is not fully understanding what the Rooney Rule can do or what a diverse slate can do. It does not go, at the end of the day, we still have to work on the decision maker, and that is training, bias training. That's the human connection, getting to know people before the opportunity is even available, and other creative ways to ensure that there is equity in the process for everybody.
If I could just comment quickly that, I agree with everything he said, John. It's, I think that the Rooney Rule has never been the problem, right? Obviously not, right? I think that if you want to look at sports like football or basketball and you draw a comparison with corporate America, what I've learned, at least at the companies that I've been at, is that just telling leaders in positions that they need to have a diverse slate is sometimes kind of a trap door for them, because there are lots of roles where people literally don't know how to find people from diverse backgrounds who can do those jobs, right? I mean, I'm on the Global Diversity Council at our company, and that's made up of a bunch of the leaders and the division heads of our company, and it's kind of a safe space where we can talk about issues, and it's diverse executives and it's white executives and it's female executives, and we get in a space where people feel comfortable saying, listen, I'm going to be honest with you, I want to hire more a diverse candidates. I don't know where to find them. I make movies and I need certain kind of camera operators. I don't know where to find diverse candidates to fill a slate, right? And so, we have to work on figuring out how to solve that problem, because it isn't fair to then ding that person, just say, you have to hire a diverse slate. And then they don't, and they're like, well, you're a bad executive. It's like, well, you know what, look, let's try to figure out how we can unpack that, right? One of the troubling and frustrating things, as you know, obviously, for the NFL, is that the NFL is, what's the percentage of African Americans playing in the league?
So we have a little over probably 70%.
Probably
African
70%.
American players.
So why the Rooney Rule, at least I think, is a lightning rod, is that in the NFL, there's no shortage of black people who are part of the sport and have spent their lives playing that sport and studying that sport. And so people have, kind of cognitive dissonance understanding why that doesn't translate into more senior executives and coaches and other roles. And I think that's why the Rooney Rule gets beaten up so much.
So not to Mickey off, but I'm going to cut Mickey off. No. What's interesting listening to this is that, here's the reality. Beyond the fact that Ndidi asked me to join the RISE board, I got on the board for the simple reason that the NFL is not much different than most sports. Huge brand, multi-billion-dollar industry. They're small family businesses. There are 32 or 30 billionaires that control it. So it's not the same as General Motors, where you have all this corporate compliance and this, reliance on, public perception. It is some, but you're trying to convince 32 billionaires that it's important to hire people of color to make their lives and their business better. And so as interesting as a human being as Stephen Ross is, the one thing that was fascinating to me is it was really simple, and it came after he had problems with the Miami Dolphins, and he said, listen, sports is a unifier, and we have to get with people and change their mindset at a young age. So how do we use this platform to improve race relations, right? And so he made a comment in a meeting one time, which is fascinating to me, and he said, I'm desperately trying to have, it wasn't like my friends, but my colleagues and peers at the country club understand the importance of diversity and inclusion. And so to me, to influence the influencers is really critical, but the techniques and, I mentioned NASCAR because, look, when I went to Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, my first idea was we're going to do Dale the movie. And it was a DVD, it was a documentary about Dale Sr., who, it was the anniversary of his death. He was the most popular. Richard Childress and Teresa Earnhardt did it. It was the most successful DVD, sports DVD in the history that was sold. They split a check for millions of dollars, and I became Richard's grandson or godson. And so for me, they were passionate about a project, but they saw how my skill set could enhance their life, which caused them to think differently. So I'm gonna go back to Ndidi. It is when the attitude takes a longer time to affect. Behavior you can kind of affect. Access is really, really important, but it is really kind of like what you were saying, having an owner, really get to know somebody on a personal level and deciding that they want to give them a shot, which is much different than, what we do at the corporate level.
So I want to personalize the Rooney Rule a little bit, just for all of you. So I've been Rooney ruled. I'll just say that. Not at the company I work at now, but in prior companies, when people say they don't know qualified people of color, women, I'm a bonus. You could double with me, right? I'm a woman of color. Because part of it is you have to be qualified. And I can't tell you how many people interviewed me and wanted to interview me and had no intention of hiring me. I was the check the box, personally. And it doesn't feel good, right? And after the third time, I thought, wait a minute. You're calling me, because I'm always open to, when someone wants to call me about a job, I listen. Why not, right? We're all open to conversations. You want to talk to me about a job that you're filling that's more senior than I am. Let's talk, right? Well, Ndidi, we want to make it a formal interview. Okay, I'm the check the box. You were never going to hire me, ever hire me. So some people, it's a check the box. And in my opinion, that doesn't work. I mean, clearly it doesn't work. But I also want to humanize the other part of it. When you're the other side of it, when I say that I'm so many times the only one in the room, it's getting better now, I was the only woman of color in the room, so of course they're going to come to me. And I'm a lawyer from Notre Dame, I'm a journalist from Northwestern, of course they're going to come to me. I have everything they want on paper. That's what they have to do. That's required of them. That is the Rooney Rule at some of the companies I was at, and it just doesn't feel so good on the other side.
And that's why we have to, work on access and helping each other get access. I was just sitting there listening to Ndidi, and I was thinking about my own career. I don't think that I've taken a job since the Army where I wasn't hired by someone who knew me and that I knew. I've never thought about it up until I'm sitting here on the stage. I've never had, and I'm an old man, I've never had a job. I've never been hired by any organization that has tapped me just because of my resume or they had an opening and I applied for it. Every single job, other than the Army, and the Army was an ROTC scholarship when I was in college, so that job was already preordained, right? That's the only job I've had where I didn't have someone who knew me, I had access to them, and they knew that they wanted me, and I knew that I wanted them. Every single job.
So after my experiences, I stopped. And from that point on, I would only take meetings and only put my name in after I spoke to someone and I knew they wanted me and I knew I was going to at least make it to the final round. Like, not that I was guaranteed a job, but I knew I was going in for the final round. Otherwise, it makes me look bad. Like, why can't I close a deal? Like, how come I'm not getting the job when the job was always taken? So, to your point, after that happened to me 3 times.
That it's a blueprint.
Yeah.
It's just an observation. Right? I mean, I would hope that we can all apply for jobs that are open and hope that we get a fair shot. And I think that with the work that is being done, that's changing. I'm just making an observation that's not been my own experience. Now, the good news is that I've gotten some good jobs over the years. So, so what we do, and if we have access, and if we have people supporting us and helping us meet people and people putting us down and giving us the opportunity, it's really about opportunity. And then what happens after that, you win some and you lose some. But again, I think that Max's point is well taken. Why the NFL, a Rooney Rule, is such a hot topic lightning rod is that people look at the brown faces in that league, and it's hard to understand why that doesn't translate. And Max has given us, Max and John both have given us reasons why, but it doesn't make us feel any better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it hits to the core of the issue is at the end of the day, what we still need to do a lot of work on is the point of the decision and how we can ensure that that is fair and equitable for everyone. I think a lot of people have gone into an interview knowing that you don't have the shot, and that never should be the case. But one thing I do have to say, I mean, I remember Tony Dungy said in a meeting that he was in that when he was interviewing with Tampa, they were already locked in on someone else for that role. It was and there's a good chance. I think what he was saying, I don't want to speak for him, is that he was on the slate. He was a Rooney. That person ended up not taking the job. He ended up getting it. And so that you never know how the process is going to turn out, and until we do get that equity, and I don't know how long that will take for everyone. Sometimes we have to make that personal decision and everyone here listening of whether you're okay knowing that you may be going into a situation where you may not be getting a fair shot. And I think that's a big problem we have in society is that there are times where that doesn't exist, and we got to stop that. And once we can do that, these kind of issues can get resolved.
And I would just add, too, that you guys clearly see that this bothered me when it happened to me, but I'm still a proponent of the Rooney Rule because I've seen it work. I've seen it, to your point, I've seen hiring managers being pleasantly surprised by saying, wow, like I didn't think this would happen. And that person may still have not gotten that job, but that person got the next job. So it is access. It's getting in front of somebody and impressing someone. And quite frankly, if they have very low expectations, it's pretty easy to impress people when they're not expecting anything. So I am a proponent of it 100%, although just not me.
And that shouldn't shock us, right?
Don't make TV the interview.
And that shouldn't shock us, right? I mean, like the whole point is that there are barriers, and so barriers aren't, kind of the very definition of it is that barriers aren't easy to overcome. So there's a certain level of resilience that we all have to have, and that, people who are in the African Americans who are in the coaching profession have to have. If it's something that they really want, then they've got to keep going back over and over again and plan, again, bet on themselves and bet on their talent and hope that there's that connection that they make, and and that it happens for them.
And say, I echo, the words that everyone up here has said. And indeed, one of the things that you just said is one of the reasons why I'm a fan of the rule as a component. I'm not a fan of the rule as a solve, but as a component, because if you start speaking to people of different backgrounds, you could be pleasantly surprised. And so you could change the mind. Also, it's more shots at the basket. And so, you take a guy like Eric Bieniemy, we hear about him all of the time because he's interviewing everywhere. I remember my first interview when I was in law school, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to answer the questions. I had no idea what questions were going to come up. But the more I interviewed, I was better prepared for that. And so if you can't get into the room to get interviewed, you can't be prepared to actually pass the test. And so that's one of the things that I like and appreciate about the Rooney Rule. But one thing that I want to shift a little bit of the focus here is we talked about the mindset of an employer, but we have not talked about the mindset of someone who's looking to get the job. Everyone I knew growing up wanted to be a professional athlete. None of them thought about doing the jobs that we have because we didn't know people that were doing these jobs. And so I just want to take a quick second here to, talk to the panelists about, like, how did you get here? And so for a student who's here today, who's thinking about getting into sports and entertainment, like, how do we navigate that? How can these students lean on your experience and leverage us to help create these opportunities? So I'll start with Max.
So Dwight King launched Dwight. Legal research and Dwight's in there. Hey, Dwight. No, I think there are a number of things. I was sitting up here thinking the same thing. I agree with Mickey. I think the only job that I got without knowing someone was right out of law school from here. I think, first of all, I'm always saying that any discipline you can find in a traditional business, you can find in sports. So it doesn't matter if you're, a tax lawyer, litigator, marketer. I have physicians that work for me. Anything you can think of, they all work within my organization. So the first thing I think you have to do is you have to develop a substantive skill. And I think a lot of people up here said excellence, because at the end of the day, sports and entertainment, it's business, and you want people who can impact your organization. So the second thing for me is really you gotta build a network. And you got to have all those things. You got to be resilient. You got to be persistent. I don't think, these are my friends, and I may have to call them 3 or 4 times to get them on the phone, because anybody who's worth talking to is not going to be sitting around waiting for your phone call. So they got stuff to do. So you shouldn't get your feelings hurt if you call several, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and you don't get through. The network is critically important because, when you get a bunch of paper on your desk, you'd be surprised. There's one young man that I'm getting ready to hire for an internship. I went to a conference down in Atlanta, and I'm so antiquated. I asked him for his card, and he pulled out this little QR code on his phone. And so I was, Yeah, I was fascinated, realized that I was antiquated, but he wound up following up with me, and I remembered what happened when I met him, so that personal relationship is really important. But I do want to say for the people that hear, you cannot underestimate the power of the Notre Dame network. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. If someone has a Notre Dame affiliation on their resume or something when they call me, I'm going to at least take a second look. There's a 90% chance I'm going to call back and try to figure it all out. But most importantly, as Miggy said, I think you got to look for opportunities. Two things. I think you got to look for opportunities within an organization that your skill set can make an impact. And then you got to demonstrate to people the qualities and the intangibles that you have. I'm sorry, I got to tell a story. So I produced this TV show with MTV Networks, and there was a young woman who evidently had been trying to get with me for like a couple years for a job opportunity. So my assistant, we had like a production assistant role, and she came on the set, and we shot this series, and she so impressed the staff, she came to me, and I got to know her through this set, and she had a master's degree, and she wanted to get in sports. And I said, listen, the only job that I have available for you right now, it's a receptionist. It's like $7 an hour. And she's like, I'll take it. So she came in every day, and she worked that job like, this was her dream job. And so we had an open house at the race team, and her mother came in, and her mother pulled me aside and let me have it. How dare you? My daughter has a master's degree from a top university, and she just undressed me. And I said, listen, your family, so with all due respect, please don't screw up your daughter's blessing and have this conversation with anybody ever again. I don't care if she's got a law degree, a PhD. She doesn't know crap about what I'm trying to teach. I'm looking for work ethic. I'm looking for chemistry. I'm looking for those character traits. I'm looking for someone who can come into my organization that'll fit in with my team and we can develop. And those intangible qualities that people demonstrate when you meet them are things that you think about when you're trying to hire somebody. So, the network, the substantive skills, you got to be resilient. You got to demonstrate those intangible qualities, and you got to figure out a way to impact. The last thing I'll say, with all the research you can do right now, it is quite impressive to know a little bit about the person that you're talking to. It's easy to find out information, but we're all human beings too, sitting on the other side of the desk. So when you come in, asking about our day, our children, our whatever, that's really helpful. But, and the last thing I'll say is please don't lead an interview talking about what a fan of sports you are. You got to have passion for the industry. We don't really necessarily need fans. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Big facts. Mickey.
Honestly, point of entry, I always tell people that how I/we got started is not really any kind of blueprint for anybody, other than some of the things Max has hit upon. We talked when we were here about what got us up in the morning, assuming that we were going to actually graduate and actually pass the bar, what we wanted to do with that degree, and we both had talked about having a passion in sports and in media. And we just decided that we were going to do it. We didn't really know how. We didn't know what to do exactly. There was no blueprint. It certainly wasn't any class that we took here. But we did know that we had to work hard at it in the same way that we knew that we had to work hard here as students and to prepare ourselves in the best way that we could for going out there and becoming lawyers. We knew that we had to have some skill set, some expertise that somebody wanted to pay us for, right? We knew that we didn't catch balls, we didn't run fast, we weren't going to do those. Well, I was probably fast. We were probably faster then. But we knew that our skill set and that the only way we were going to have people take us seriously was to get really, really good at something. And so we just were hoping that if we did that and we knew what we wanted to do and knew what we had a passion for, that we would be ready for opportunities. And some opportunities you can help create, and some just fall in your lap. And we had some of each. And so there's no real blueprint, but that's the best way that I can put it, is that when those opportunities that we either created or that fell in our laps, we were ready. And, we were prepared. There was nobody who was going to outwork us. We were going to be prepared for every interview, every opportunity to sign a client or to get in front of someone and to try to sell them on what we thought that we could do for them. And it kind of sort of worked out for us. So, that's not a great answer, but that's the real deal.
So I would say I took the path less taken, I guess. My passion was sports. And I'm sorry, Dean Cole, but I could take law or not, right? My passion was sports. I wanted to get into sports. And I wanted some very specific locations, some very specific sports. So for me, that mattered a little bit more than my expertise, because I thought I'm pretty well-rounded and I could do a lot. And as an entry-level person, it's not going to be rocket science. So I'll figure out how to do the job. But let me get there first. And when I was a third-year law student, I interviewed with firms like everybody does. I had an offer. This was a long time ago, 6 figures. And I had an internship offer for the NCAA in Overland Park, Kansas. It was that long ago. It wasn't in Indy, for $18,000. And I took the internship, right? So people really thought I lost my mind. But for me, I followed my passion, and I knew it would work. I waited tables at night. These guys knew me back then. I got the question, well, you must be here because you didn't pass the bar. No, I passed the bar. First time, California. It was intentional. And I just knew I was going to bet on myself. I'm going to get in here. I'm used to being a poor college student. It's one more year. I'm going to bet on myself. And less than a year, I had offers left and right at most athletic departments. I was a black woman who played softball. And by the way, while I was in law school, I was an assistant coach on the softball team here. So I coached. I was a lawyer who passed the bar, and I worked at the NCAA and had relationships with the NCAA. Who wouldn't hire me, right? So that was my sort of, strategy, is follow my passion, get to know people, do a really good job. And a lot of my friends now at the NCAA, they're athletic directors, literally, everywhere, at all the major athletic departments. And I can pick up the phone anytime from my 1 year that I was an intern at the NCAA, because when I was an intern, I was at everything. I was networking. I was doing this, doing that. So I would say I definitely took a different route, and it probably was a more difficult route. But so my advice to all of you is follow your passion and do it while you're young. It's so much harder to follow your passion. And most of the time when you follow your passion, you're going to make less money. That's just the reality. So it's very difficult to do that when you're in a mortgage and you have children and you have all this. And then I'm going to go back to your comment about the fan thing too. Max, that's the first. If someone says they're a fan, they are out 100%. Because when they say they're a fan, I say, buy a ticket. That's not what we do. We don't watch games. That's not what we do. We're running business. We're running businesses. And when we watch a game, trust me, we're not watching the game for the game. I'm watching the game is did our announcer say something wrong? What was wrong with that camera? What was wrong with that shot? Oh my God, did we not go to commercial at the right time? What kind of call am I going to get? That's how I watch the game, which annoys my husband. It's very hard to watch a game. But again, we are not here to be fans. And I do enjoy being a fan every now and then, and I get a ticket, and I go in, and I enjoy it. So this is a business at the end of the day. And also, D&I is a business at the end of the day.
I'm
going to close with you, so I'm going to go to John.
Everything it's wonder I'll have conversations like this, because a lot of times you're so busy you just don't have time to do this. So it's almost feel like we're having coffee, chatting, but I would say I came from an upper middle class family. My father was orthodontist, first orthodontist in North Carolina. My mom's an educator. Had a lot of access. I had no clue. I had zero clue of how to get into media, entertainment, and sports. But that has always been my passion. I played college football, I played college tennis, college, tennis, football, basketball, my whole life. That's what I care about. I love movies. I love TV shows, all of that. But I didn't think I had a place. I didn't see anything that was welcoming to me as anybody that looked like me. But I had, a dream, but it didn't have that. For me, it's a little bit different because I always perceive myself to be a fan, but I'm going to say how I agree with Ndidi as I get more into it. What I mean by that is, so I started as an avid fan of the NFL, of the NBA, of the USTA. That's just who I am, and my wife surely knows that. And so for me, I said, I'm going to go to law school, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to get that business degree so I can really, thrive in a large business environment. When I realized I just completely didn't like it, then I held on to my passion, and I think there was just a lot of luck. I almost felt like I fell into it. And then I had this opportunity, and I got a little lucky through connections, and I got into media, and that was it. After I got into media, I just wanted, if it's media, entertainment, or sports, I'm all in, because that's what I do. That's just what I love. I am a fan, but I will tell you, once you become a part of the business, you will no longer look at it the same. I love football, but I can't look at it. It's kind of sad, right? But I can't look at the game the same way because I've been in the back conversations. I know how the business is run. It's different. It's different, but it's okay because it's a wonderful industry to be in, and we need more of you in it. So we really, I didn't feel like the opportunity was there when I was, 20 years old, but there is now. We are dying for great, diverse talent as a whole. But the point is now we're inviting and welcoming diverse talent, where before that was not the case. So this is a wonderful time if you are into this and you want to be engaged. If you want it, you'll get it. There's way too many opportunities out there, so take advantage. And it's okay. You might look at the games a little bit different, but don't worry. You're still going to be inspired. You're still going to cheer, but you are going to look at it differently.
Thank you. And Rocket, we're going to close with you. What words do you want to leave the students with?
The word that I would leave you with. I had a whole different mindset. I was like about to give you how I got here, but all right. So, in short, the words I would leave you with is you have to be relentless in being determined to shine your light. And I was talking to some of the young students earlier, and one of the things that I realized, and I started with this, and I shared it with the young ladies. I was, in 2017, I was in my house. We had all my nieces and nephews over. It was about 17 people in the house that maybe a family of 6 could enjoy comfortably, and it was like jam-packed, man. It was a summer. Everybody was over. It was a great time of fellowship. They were there for like a month, and I was enjoying it. However, hold that right there. In 2012, I had started having like these really severe vertigo attacks, going to doctors everywhere, praying, having no success with anybody other than, well, maybe you could. Some guy said, hey, take lithium and it'll make your brain dull and you won't be searching for balance as intensely as it normally would, and that'll reduce the vertigo. I was like, man, you want me to make my brain dumb so I don't, what the? So it was like there was no solutions. And up until that point, I had seen significant results when physical things would happen, and I would just pray and trust that the healing, whatever I needed, it would be made manifest. That nothing was working. So I give you that. Now we're back in 2017, and we're in the kitchen, and I was like feeling from time to time, I would just feel like, oh, my energy is low. Like I would have energy to about 12 o'clock, then I need to take a nap. Then I'd get up again, and I have energy to 8 o'clock, then I had to go to bed. Like it was kind of like one of those deals. But this time it felt different, and it felt like life and the essence of life was leaving my body. And I remember I was like, I didn't say anything because everybody was having just a great time. So I just snuck away, went upstairs, and laid in the bed, and it became more intense, and I knew I was going to die. And I remember recalling a couple of times when I watched near-death experiences and people would talk about how they could feel their spirit getting ready to leave their body, like it was just like the essence was leaving. And I felt like that. And I remember I just laid there, and I wasn't afraid. It was not that it was like this environment of total peace, but it was like it wasn't anything anxious or anything like that or worry. But I do remember thinking, man, my children are going to be really sad. My wife's going to be really sad because I'm a great guy. Like that kind of, mindset. So they're going to miss me. And then and then my other thought was, and this, I think almost every man who has a family would probably think this way. And you can raise your hand if I'm far-fetched and I'm wrong. But I was like, okay, at least it won't be a financial burden for my family like when my father died, and they'll be okay to get over it and they'll figure it out. And let me tell you something, it just came so strong, and I just closed my eyes and I thought I was dead. And obviously I'm not, I'm still here. And so, all of a sudden, the next awareness that I had was that I was still here. My eyes weren't open, but it was like coming out of the core of me was a voice. And it said it said twice. It said, Raghib, there's an answer, a remedy, and a solution for everything. Then it said it again, just as calm and just as I'm talking. It said, Raghib, there's an answer, a remedy, and a solution for everything. And in that moment, I didn't feel any different, but I knew enough at that time about myself and about what I call the rules of engagement when it comes to being able to partake of the more abundant life that we all have an inheritance to take and to receive. It was like I grabbed the whole of it, and it's like I pulled myself out of the depths of you're going to die, and I just expected, which I understand now, whatever we expect, especially in moments of tribulation, trouble, trial, whatever we expect is in fact what we believe. And humans are designed in such a way that not only what we believe, but what we truly believe, we have the opportunity to see it manifest in our lives. So I didn't feel different, but I knew, okay, even though the truth is I don't feel different, and I still feel, the whole truth is there's an answer, a remedy, and a solution for everything. So I pulled out of that, and it was like I started finding out what this answer, remedy, and the solution and the magnitude of it in the lives of everyone that I encountered. And I understood that all of us have the capacity and the inheritance to receive answers, remedies, and solutions for whatever it is that we are encountering and our call in this earth, which then I understood we are to have the ability to walk in that same understanding, and more importantly, we are the essence of answers, remedies, and solutions. We can be that. And then I started, all these things are happening over probably the course of the next year and a half, and it's like all of a sudden I realized that the light, there's a scripture that says the life of Christ is the light of men, the light of mankind. There's a light in all of us when we come into this earth, and our call in essence is to shine our light. And the earth or the world system that's superimposed on this earth and the powers that should not be anytime a birth comes into the earth, that birth is a threat to the powers that should not be, that currently are in positions of ruler. And I'm talking beyond ethnic capacities and people, genders. I'm talking on the level that really influences the influences of this earth. And so when I understood that, it was then that I realized all of us have the ability to tap into that at any time. And what happens is it has to be a daily exercise, because they're daily bombarding us with things that discourage us, daily bombarding us with things that make us afraid, daily bombarding us with things that make us hateful, daily bombarding us with things that steal our peace, daily bombarding us with things that make us anxious. And one of the great turnarounds in my life was when I'll never forget this. I remember when I was 37 years old, I finally, I was taking an assessment of how I was feeling internally, and I was like, wow, I feel like a grown man now. And the reason I felt like I was a grown man was because I finally identified what was important to me. And what was important to me was peace. Like peace. And you say, oh, that's so simple. No, I have peace when my family's provided for. I have peace when a problem arises that looks insurmountable and has my doggone heart beating out of its chest and all of the stress hormones at high alert, and then I'm able to process it properly and find the answer, the remedy, or a solution. I have peace. So it was like all of us have the light, and it's imperative that you start expecting that answers, remedies, and solutions not only will be added to you when you start seeing it this way and drawn to you, and not only be able to have that drawn to you, but then you become the embodiment of the same. So for the young people in here, everybody in here, that is the perspective that I would, if I had last words to say to you, that I would leave you with and be able to encourage you with and let you know that it's a daily thing. And I'm telling you, you ever hear people say, they're in a conversation and they were like, man, I should have listened to my first mind because I made this decision, but something was telling me not to make that decision. Everybody has that experience. And I'm here to tell you that's the voice of God in you. Everybody came into this earth with it, whether you believe there's a God or not. That's the voice of the creator of this universe in you that is meant to be your guide in this earth. And I would say, as you are understanding and expecting answers, remedies, and solutions to be added to your life, let's start listening to the voice. Differentiate, because there's a voice that's telling you, go here, don't go here. And the voice is telling you, oh, the hell with that, get your thing on, let's go. And you have to be able to differentiate between the two. So, listen to your first mind, be an expector that answers, remedies, and solutions are your inheritance, and that whatever comes your way, that you can embody these answers, remedies, and solutions, overcome whatever it is, and in doing so, you'll be shining your light. And that, to me, is of utmost importance as you navigate your way through this earth.
So before I pass it off to our host to close us out, I just want to thank you guys for sharing your perspectives. This was great, and I want to thank the audience for listening in on our, as Jonathan said, our coffee chat that we would have had if y'all weren't here anyway. So, so thank y'all.
Wow. Well, thank you all for being such an inspiration to all of us in this room. My name is Tayo Adel Shifogan. I'm the president of the Mendoza Black Credit Risk and Management Club. And I have the honor and privilege of closing us out tonight. And before I do so, I just want to thank our sponsors, the Fagery Drinker, Biddle and Wreath, the Notre Dame Law Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Notre Dame Law Alumni Relations, Notre Dame Athletics Department, Mendoza College of Business, the Mendoza Black Card Risk and Management Club, and last but not least, the Notre Dame Sports Communication and Entertainment Law Forum. And I am overwhelmingly inspired by what we just witnessed. And I hope that everyone here can take in the true essence of what you just heard and be able to apply it to your daily life. And I don't want this moment to pass you by, and for you, and even the panelists as well, because you all was also fed from each other. I don't want this to pass you by, and I don't want you to feel like you're not empowered. I did not know what to expect coming here today. I am not in the sports industry whatsoever, but after I have heard what I've heard tonight, I am so confident, not only in my abilities, but in the abilities of every single person in this room, that you can make change in this world. We are in a school that gives us opportunity that some of us may have never thought we would have. We are seeing people that are doing things that some of us may have never seen. But this is a true testament to what we all can do, especially as minorities in this country, and what we all can achieve. And to see this representation in the Notre Dame Law Department inspires me to go and make change in the Mendoza department. We don't have a black dean, and that is amazing to see. And I'm grateful to see you, brother, to see what you have been accomplishing so far. And I want to leave you all with just these words of encouragement, or to build off of what we have just witnessed so far, that no matter what you are going through in life and no matter what you may face, remember that you are just going through that season for a small period of time. And James just talks about that your endurance is being built, that you are being built up to have the faith to be able to experience something and lead something so that someone else can come after you to do greater works. And this is what this looks like, this panel and moderator and association and student body of true excellence. And I do not want you to leave here feeling like you yourself are not excellent. Everyone in this room, you have the privilege of being here, and you will continue to be a privileged and an honorable person to make and to exceed expectations as you move forward in life. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you to Bosa. Thank you. Did I say that correctly? I hope so. Thank you to everyone for being here. And with that, I say good night, and I wish you all a safe journey back home. Thank you.